Welcome to Business Events Radio. I'm Tony Adams, and today we have a very exclusive interview with a true pioneer of British broadcasting. Don Kotak has been breaking barriers and building bridges for nearly almost 5 decades, from launching the UK's first dedicated Asian radio programming within the BBC Radio Leicester in 1976 to establishing Sabras Radio as an independent powerhouse that's been the voice of Leicester's vibrant multicultural community for over 40 years. Don transformed a simple idea into a media institution that proves community broadcasting can thrive even in a digital age. Don, welcome to Business Events Radio. Thank you very much for taking your time out.
Thank you, Jenny.
Don, take us back to 1976 when you first started broadcasting with BBC Radio Leicester. What drove you to create programming specifically for the Asian community at a time when almost multicultural media was virtually non-existent?
1976. I was training to I'd finished university and I was training to become a chartered accountant. And I'm a big Leicester City fan. I was down there quite a lot and used to interact a little bit with a chap called Dennis Coath, who used to do the sports commentating from Filbert Street for Radio Leicester. One thing led to another, and Radio Leicester were convinced to do a little bit more programming for the Asian community, directed at the Asian community, because we had a lot of refugees from Uganda who arrived in the city, and the Asian population mushroomed suddenly in the city. So a lot of East African Asians.
Post Idi Amin.
Post Idi Amin 73, then a lot of Kenyan Asians and Tanzanian Asians came. So a lot of East African Asians settled in Leicester, obviously for obvious reasons, because they all knew each other and that kind of stuff. And I never talk about radio without mentioning a chap named Owen Bentley.
Know very well from the Midlands.
Right, and he was a manager at Radio Leicester at the time, and he took a bold decision to actually do something on Radio Leicester for the Asian community, and I was very pleasantly surprised that he actually agreed to do that. And we agreed to do a 2-hour show in a week, and had to do a little paper on what we're going to do and all that. And he said, "That looks okay, why don't you do it?" And so we got going with with a lady called Mina Trivedi as well, and we used to record our programs, because obviously not initiated into broadcasting at that time, learning the trade, so to speak. The Radio Leicester in those days used to have a little shed on Freeman's Common, which I think they still have, and the transmitter side is next door to it, where, in fact, as it happens, today's transmitter for the BBC and Sabras is still based there. And we used to go to this little hut and record on spools, big spools, the 6 o'clock show. That was the name of the programme, coined at that time, and it was all splashed over the Radio Times. That was the BBC newsletter magazine at that time, if you remember.
Ariel.
Radio Times, yeah.
Yes.
And so we were all over the Radio Times as well. And I was amazed, because it was a very bold decision to take, because we were at the end of the BBC Radio's broadcasting day. We came on for an hour, and then we junctioned into Radio 2. And I think it's fair to say that there were some eyebrows raised, and there was some opposition within the camp, I think, of the mainstream radio people, because obviously, if I was a manager, I'd be worried about, okay, I've certainly got this hour of foreign programming coming in, people are going to switch the dial to another station. Are they going to retune in the morning back to me or not? So in that context, it was a huge decision, and that was the start of the 6 o'clock show, and that was the start of what we today call the birthplace of the BBC Asia network. So we started with 2 hours, and then we built it up quite a bit, and we built a team up. The likes of Mike Olvert and others came in, and we were I think we built it up to about 12, 14 hours a day, because we were so successful, and there was a huge response from within the Asian community, who, as you know, are Bollywood mad. In those days, all these refugees were so sad and grumpy. As soon as you put some Bollywood music on, they were quite happy with that. So we set out to deliver programming for the whole of the Asian community, and we made it fairly inclusive to the extent that we included, for a little while, we included the Caribbean community as well. And I remember going to do an interview with a Polish priest, because the Polish population had just bought a church for themselves in the city. National Front was quite
yes, remember
prevalent at that time, and I remember in one of our talk shows, because then started graduating as we got more hours. We had a talk show as well, and I always remember a call we got from a guy, because it all came through the station assistant, so he had to vet you first before it came through. If you remember, you couldn't open, you didn't, well, even today I don't know what it was like at the BBC, but you didn't actually control the desk yourself. It came through your oppo. But this guy got through, and there's a National Front guy, and he was very rude. Rudely said, "What the hell are you doing on the BBC?" You know, blah 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 blah. And that was 1977, I think, or 78, something like that. Anyway, there are a lot of stories about that. So we progressed from there to I think when I joined, when I moved across to commercial radio, I think we were up to 20 hours a week from my memory at the BBC. Then Central Radio came into being.
Absolutely.
In Leicester, the first commercial radio station in the country, I think it was.
It was indeed.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, you've been described as a pioneer of Asian, not only Asian broadcasting, but broadcasting throughout the UK, and I think that's a deserved title. Now, when you launched the first Sabras programme on Central Radio, about 1981? 81. Did you actually anticipate then it would become what it is today, nearly 45 years later? No,
I mean, it was always a hobby for me. You know, I was training as well to be an accountant. I got qualified, and I was in the profession. So it was a hobby for me, but I regained a passion for that, having spent my very early years with Bollywood music. When I came to this country at a very young age, I was Radio Caroline, Radio Luxembourg,
Atlantic 252,
and a little earpiece on a little Sanyo radio under the blanket, because my dad didn't like English music, so that kind of stuff. And I was in a rock band, so to speak, a rubbish band, not a rock band. So I was totally into mainstream music. I was into Western music completely. So when Ern Bentley suggested we do this, and I had to get back into Asian music, so to speak. And of course, there was no music. There's one interesting thing is nobody had any music. And the lady who was here earlier on, her husband had a shop called VAC News Agencies on Harrison Road,
wow.
VAK, and he had a library of Asian records. So people used to go and, like you borrow books, they used to go and borrow LPs,
right.
Take them home and record them on their cassettes. And that was part of his business. He has a news agency as well. And that lady actually I've got so many memories of her actually getting my 9 records ready for my hours, because I'm running late from A to B, straight into the back news agency. She said, "Well, I know you played Sholay last week, so you're not going to play it this week, are you?"
So almost your playlist was already formulated?
Yeah, I would send a list to her.
Right.
We rented the LPs. So the BBC paid VAC News Agencies for X pence per LP per week, and if we don't return them on time, there's a penalty. It's very much like a school, like a library.
Like a tuck shop, isn't it?
Like a library, yeah. And then we started buying our own.
Now, Leicester has one of the most significant South Asian populations demographically in the UK. Now, how did the community's needs shape your vision of what Sabras has actually become?
There was a vision simply to provide, without knowing what people wanted, but to provide a wide range of programming which appealed to the whole cross-section of the Asian community. So when I was approached by Central Radio to actually join them, it was a wrench of a decision, because to leave the BBC and go to commercial radio, which in the end Central Radio folded, but then we moved on to the Trent Group bought the whole franchise, if you like, or won the license, and we were then given, we had an agreement, and we started with 2 hours again. So here you are, you built something up to about 10, 12, 15 hours. I think I was at Radio Leicester, I can't remember when I left, and to go there. But one of the conditions I imposed on me transferring across and starting Sabras over there was that the 2 hours that we started with promise of more hours, would not clash with any of the hours that Radio Leicester was already broadcasting. So the Asian population would have an additional 2 hours that they could listen to on radio. And that worked out. And the vision was really to start delivering entertainment information for the whole cross-section of the community, and not distinguish as between the population, as we have. Unfortunately, we have a fragmented audience now. But at that time, it was kind of a global South Asian programming. So we started that again. We started that with a couple of hours a week, and as you know, so I coined the name Sabras there for that very reason. Sub or Russ, sub is everybody, and Russ is taste, everybody's taste. So we are Sabras, we are everybody. Whether you like that genre or that type of music, or you're from that background or that background, we are going to try and give you everything you need.
Accountant by day, rock star by night, diverse music genre liking, but and many, when I speak to peers in the industry, a serial entrepreneur, and when you go into the boardroom, even to this day, some people will actually quake in their boots, because you know exactly what you're talking about. So let's talk about those early days operating within the GWR group. What were the biggest challenges you faced trying to establish Asian programming within predominantly, once again, white-owned media companies?
Well, there were big challenges. And first of all, even before GWR came into being, it was Trent. Trent was taken over by Midland Radio PLC. I think some chap called Bailey, I think, yeah. Then Capital came in, I think.
It did.
And then came GWR, because GWR and Capital merged.
Yes.
So GWR, from mid-80s, the other interesting point in broadcasting was the split frequency experiment in 1986, which Ofcom, or Radio Authority in those days... IBA, yeah. And they came out with this idea of split frequency, which meant that the FM and the AM, which in those days, up to that point, were simulcasting the same output, were allowed to split their outputs. So what the mainstream stations like Leicester Sound did was they put the youngsters' music, if you like, on FM, and oldies and classics and talk stuff and religious stuff on AM. So AM was treated like the dustbin. So when we said we wanted more hours, you can have them in the dustbin, no problem, Right. So
a bit like the graveyard shift, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So we were broadcasting. All our hours were pushed into the AM, but we were so successful, and we had our own commercial guys. We were not doing it for money. I mean, Leicester Sound was making the money. We had a budget to run the Asian side, and Sabras grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, grew to a huge number of hours there. And I always remember chap Anwar, who used to be our salesman, and a phenomenal salesman. And commercially, we were doing really well for the mainstream side. We were, in fact, there were times when we were supporting the FM side from the AM revenues. We were highly successful, and we got more and more hours. And took part in this. When this experiment happened, we took part in it, and we said, okay, we'll do that, and we'll move on to AM, and we increased it. We knew we had. I just knew that we would have more opportunity to increase our hours on AM rather than FM.
Let's go back to 1994 then, which was a pivotal year when Sabras won its own independent license to broadcast on 1260 AM. That must have been a huge moment. Now tell us what the journey from being a programme segment to becoming a full radio station.
I think I'll just take one step back before 94, because in 92 we were so successful. We went to the Radio Authority hand in hand with the Leicester Sound management, and we convinced the Radio Authority to make 1260 into a 24-hour Asian radio station. And that was always my ambition, that Leicester should have its own 24-hour Asian radio station.
And that was 92?
92.
Wow.
They agreed to do maybe late 91. But in 92, we had a document, proper paper, from the radio authority saying 1260 AM can become a fully fledged Asian radio station. Wow, that was my goal. We've arrived. We've now arrived. So we have that document, and we're now planning with, I remember the chap's name, Stuart Linnell, who's still around in the industry. He was then, we had such a big change of management with GWR. So this chap was running it now. And we were then doing plans to, I had to prepare budgets and everything else, which I did. I spent a lot of midnight hours and burnt the candles to prepare budgets and everything else to present to the people, and justify why we would be able to run 24 hours and how we would make it work and how we would still enable the mainstream side to earn money from us, effectively. So the best way I thought to achieve that was that, right, I'll give you a guaranteed contract sum, blah, blah, and we'll just get on with our 24-hour station. And we were working well to agree all that. And suddenly a situation arose where they had sold that document to another organisation. As a complete shock. That was a complete shock to us. And I even had to find that out third hand, and it was done in the darkness of the night, and certain rumours flew around about what happened, but it didn't matter, because I was more interested in the fact that Leicester had a 24-hour Asian radio station, and it was annoying the way it had happened, and I decided to finish with broadcasting at that time. So did my team, who was not at my request, just voluntarily decided to jump ship as well, get out of broadcasting, and we walked out, if you like, and there were headlines in the local newspapers and everything else. And so I was away from that for a little while, I think for about 18 months. And we used to do a lot of free community work there for no charge, and religious organisations and everything else. And suddenly we started getting people from the community people saying that the new setup wants to make money out of our community events and all that kind of stuff. And one particular story I heard really annoyed me. So I just sat down one day and I said, right, I think this is not right. The licence is going to be advertised soon. So we're going to apply for the licence again. And I talked to one of my ex-team members, if they wanted to come on board, and said, I'm going to do this, because it really riled me the way it was being run. We were offered to go back in, and I said no, I didn't really want to, really, because it didn't matter who ran it, as long as you ran it properly and looked after the community.
So it was more about governance. The governance had to be right.
Yeah, governance had to, delivery had to be right, motive had to be right. You had to be right by the community. If you start making money from religious and community bodies, then it wasn't right. The licence was advertised, and we had a lot of approaches from a lot of different organisations, including GWR, to tie in with them, because GWR, being a PLC company, did not want to lose that licence, and they knew we were strong contenders. So they offered a joint venture with us. They were already in bed with another organisation, and I said, well, is this the way you approach matters, So we're not interested, really. So offered all sorts of things, like the first non-Asian board member of a PLC company in radio broadcasting. So we applied, and I'd already bought this building for some reason, hoping that we'd get the licence. We got the licence.
And just to describe this building, Don, I mean, this historically, it's a landmark on the Melton Road. A Grade 2 listed church, is that right?
An old church.
Old church.
Front of a church. The back of the church was converted to homes for the elderly. The front of the church, and I'll tell you a little story about it. The front bit was lying empty for months and months and months, and I managed to drive past it. I used to see a board there saying, for sale, and the agents were Snow and Ash. I'll always remember that. And one day, across the road from here, there's a restaurant called the Khyber Restaurant, or there isn't there anymore, it used to be, and I used to have a meal there every now and then. One day we were there having a meal, a couple of chaps and I, and they were dropping me off home, and we drove past this, and it was nearly midnight, and I said to the chap in the lay-by here, stop. And I got out and I looked at the building with all the stained glass windows being broken and all that sort of stuff. And I said, I'm like this place, I want to do something. I want to know why it's not being sold. What is the problem? Okay. It's been here for so long. So I rang up the agents, and I knew the chap Mark, and he said to me, first words to me was, don't touch it with a barge pole, okay? Just forget it, don't even entertain the idea. I said, I want to see it, Mark. I said, I'll take you for lunch, come and show me. So, again, cut a long story short, he came and showed me. As soon as I walked in, I said, I'm going to have it. I'm going to have this place. And he explained the reason to me why he was not selling, and he wouldn't wish me to buy it, is because the covenants were very strong. The church had strict conditions on what it could be used for. So I said, okay, I want it. Agreed the price with the diocese, and I went down to meet the church commissioners and told them what I wanted to do. And commercial radio. So what's commercial radio? We thought there was only the BBC in this world, that sort of thing. And had a lot of explaining to do about commercial radio and what would we be doing from here. Would you be selling any alcohol? No. Would you be practicing any religious? No. We would have religious programs on our radio station, but we would not be practicing any other religion from there. All the conditions. That's one of the reasons it's not being sold. And I bought it and signed the paperwork in 1993, and the license was the application was going through in 1994. So I bought it with that in mind, because I looked at it and I said, this is ideal. If we win the license, then this is ideal for a radio station. We did 3 studios, and I had the design in my mind, and we are right in the heart of the community, and that was the main thing. So we got the license, and then we got going from here on the 7th of September 1995.
All those years ago, and here we are almost in a digital domain, which we are now. You're broadcasting on AM, DAB, FM and online. Yeah. How has the digital revolution changed the way you connect with your audience, especially younger generations who might discover Asian music through streaming platforms?
Good question. We saw, and GWR also were instrumental in this, because they were the D1, they were the first DAB multiplex owners, and we teamed up with them. In 2012, I think, or 11, we agreed to go on DAB at that time, and at quite a big cost, because the future had to be digital. And one of the things we did was, when they applied for the East Midlands license, through one of their subsidiaries called NDEM, we insisted on being shareholders in that in return for our support and our financial contribution, because we we believed in digital. We wanted to be part of the organisation which is going to own the digital multiplex around here, and which we did, and which we are still part of there. And the digital footprint was very important to us. GWR prepared a lot of paperwork showing when digital radio will actually become the force. And I think the predictions at that time were that by 2017, 2018, DAB will be the only significant platform through which radio will broadcast. But that assumed that the cars would be equipped with DAB at a very rapid rate, which the car manufacturers promised at that time, but it never delivered, and the whole thing was put back. Otherwise, I think analog radio would have died some 7, 8 years ago. What
would your argument be to some critics who said DAB actually has failed as a platform? I mean, you had DRM, it came through. Maybe enough. I mean, obviously the lion's share was always the BBC, and still is, in terms of its interest in for what DAB stands for. Do you think it's actually been fit for purpose? I
don't think so. I think it's not been modelled properly. It's not been marketed properly, and it's not been governed properly. The government has changed its mind again and again. And this idea that Ofcom came up with, that will tie the renewal of an analog license to your presence on a digital platform, was a noose around the neck of many small commercial radio stations, effectively, because you had to subscribe to a very expensive platform, which it still is. DAB, in this country it is. It's not so expensive because there's a modern form of delivery, modern DAB. The problem we've got, I think, at the moment is a monopoly on the DAB multiplexes. The costs are very, very high for small commercial radio stations to be on DAB, but we continue to be DAB because we believed in DAB, but it's not actually progressed as quickly or as successfully as we thought it would. And I think most commercial radio stations will agree on that, small ones especially. The larger ones have a stake in the multiplex holder anyway, so the revenues are quite well protected. One of the things I've always said about DAB is, we couldn't go, our salesman couldn't go to you and say, right, you're paying us 10p for being on 1260 on AM and FM. Can we increase our price to 11p because you're now on DAB? So no, it doesn't make any difference to them. So commercially, the revenues didn't increase. So it's in fact a big hit on the P&L when it becomes a fixed cost. But you need to do that in order to stay on the digital platform, in the digital race, and also to have your license renewed. And because it's tied to that completely. So it's a huge cost. It's not revolutionised as much as it should have done. I think the latest Ofcom figures show that there's 52% of listening happens on the digital platforms, but not DAB necessarily. Nobody's actually given any figures of what is the DAB, what is the reality. How many people listen through DAB as opposed to on your app or on your PC. That's the biggest digital platform. And not all cars have DAB.
It's well established that radio is still the most listened to platform.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your peers. Let's talk about your counterparts, and let's talk about other individuals. I mean, the likes of the late Dr. Avatar, late Tony Litt, now of course the Sunrise, Dr. Aaron Bajaj in the Midlands at Excel. Shujat Ali, the ex-CEO of Asian Sound Radio. Was there never a game plan for you guys to merge maybe or become a powerhouse in the radio sector? Because one thing I've certainly heard over the years is Asian broadcasting is very strong commercially, and they bring great value, and it has. And we've seen that with figures and the economy as well. I mean, you've made a massive contribution to the economy.
I think there were discussions to actually have a joint sales approach, form like a common agency owned by all of us, and to go out and get a larger share of the national budgets from the media agencies who were ignoring our stations. Even when we were in Radar, and we did some sums to show that Radar we couldn't justify being in Radar for the revenue Radar was creating for us, But as a whole, it would have been a lot better. We had some discussions, never actually went forward very much in terms of joining up with on the programming basis or ownership basis. I think that was very difficult. There were one or two attempts. It was very difficult because I think there is a certain amount of self-pride or egoism or whatever you want to call it, label that, no, I'm happy to be doing it. I'm better off doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, autonomy.
So it's not progressed. So for us, we've tried to reach out into London. We did on 558 for a number of years. We broadcast there, but financially it wasn't feasible. And when they told us, when Radio Authority told us we couldn't convert that into a 24-hour station, we've just plodded on, and we've as a East Midlands station, and we're quite happy really doing that. And I think same at the other stations. They've done very well.
And I may continue now. You're a very particular MD when choosing talent that comes on your radio station, and have in the past had some of the most respected broadcasters in the past, like the late Vinod Suri and Farouk Razak.
Oh, icons. fantastic broadcasters. Farouk Razak was the most talented person I've met. And a really fine gentleman. And we're very sorry to have lost him. He was God's gift to this earth. And not just in broadcasting terms, just as a human being. And same with Vinod Suri, great broadcaster. And we've had 3 losses from our staff here in Rishi, but two big icons, Farouk Razak, left a big hole for us, massive hole, and for me personally as well. There's a time, I went through a period of time when the station didn't matter to me because Farouk wasn't there.
December the 9th, 2024, what does that rekindle any dates for you? People that have already gone, but they could have been number 4. I was actually doing drive time. How surreal, how uncanny.
Big shock that was when I got that call. I couldn't believe it, and thank God you're sitting here. And that's why I agreed to talk to you.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
But
looking at the media landscape then today, Don, there's much more diversity than when you started originally. But we still hear about underrepresentation. If I hear that word again, and how many times I hear that word, what's your take on how far we've come? I mean, have we made progression, or is there still regression? And the lack of new talent that seems not to be coming through.
Yeah, I think I totally agree, because it's not very appealing. We have so many different platforms as well now. Social media has created so many different opportunities. We are struggling like mad to recruit youngsters here. I remember the time when we, in the 90s, when we I've got to mention we were the first radio station to do RSLs. I mean, we were the first radio station to actually do Ramzan FM in the country. And at that time, to find presenters was, the people wanted to do that, even on a voluntary basis. Diwali FM, even for Sabras, people wanted to. We used to get letters saying, "I want to be a presenter. How do I go about it?" Now, you're asking for people to write in. People write in, but obviously, people no youngsters. There are quite a few middle-aged and over-middle-aged oldies like me who want to become presenters. But show me a youngster who wants to become a presenter. It's not only financial. It's just there's no interest really in this type of broadcasting from them, because they're into all sorts of different types of broadcasting. It's interesting, when we made an application for a license in London, and we did a lot of research, paid a lot of money for a lot of research, and the 52% of youngsters in a particular age group, which was 18 to 25 rather, 52% of Asian youngsters listen to Kiss FM.
Absolutely.
I've got the clear statistics still, and I'm shocked to see that.
Yeah.
And that has just progressed, and that was 10 years ago. So it's just progressed onto it. Onto that. I mean, we know that youngsters, youngsters I know says, "Oh yeah, my mum listens to your station, my dad listens to your station," and we can't shake that reputation off, because we can't modernise and can't get more young, if you like, until we have the big budgets and we recruit youngsters, But I don't know how successful that would be anyway.
What still excites you about coming to work each day? What actually drives Don Kotak into the studios of Sabras Radio?
Well, first of all, it always has been a hobby. It's remained a hobby, thank goodness. Even though we're a commercial radio station, for me, it's always remained a hobby. I don't come in here that often now, but I go at least once a week just to drop in and have a cup of tea, and I find this place very, very peaceful. And I quite enjoy sitting here, just having a chat with everybody. But yeah, what drives us is, we're here, we want to carry on, and we're not going to be the biggest station in the world, and we don't want to be the biggest station in the world, but what we want to do is what we put out on the airwaves has got to be good, and it's got to be right. A
couple of weeks ago when I sort of reached out to you, we were talking about the very glitzy 30th anniversary on the 7th of September to mark 30 years, and almost 30 minutes of this recording, we're sort of recapping 30 years in the industry. It's a milestone and a great achievement, not only what you've done yourself and with your team, with the regulators, of course, as well, and long may continue. What are you hoping to achieve on the 7th of September, this very sort of auspicious event?
Well, first of all, it's a party for our listeners and our team, our broadcasters and our advertisers who've supported us strongly in the past, and the artists. It was surprising when we were putting a line-up of artists who were going to have their every Bhangra legend we picked up. So, fantastic, because they remember the days when, for example, even with Leicester Sound, as part of the Sabras there, as part of Leicester Sound, we did so many interviews with the legends. They all remember those sort of things when they needed a bit of a lift. We were there to push them and propel their music and play their music, more than we should have done, just to make sure that Bhangra gets established in the country, in the UK. And these guys, remember that, and their thanks are what the 7th is about. The thanks to them as well. There's quite a few of them are going to be there, which is going to be great. But it's a thank you to all our listeners, thank you to all our commercial partners, and thank you to the presenters, who've actually been here and done what they have done for Sabras.
And there's no secret your love and relationship with the Punjabi community in Leicester, and I'm surprised your surname, or certainly the end name, isn't Don Kotak Singh, because your Punjabi is it's phenomenal. So sort of wrapping up then, Don, very quickly, as MD, who's now showing definitely signs of 50 Shades of Grey, maybe a little bit darker on that. When you eventually do decide to sort of step back from day-to-day operations, what do you hope will be the lasting legacy of Sabras Radio and your actual work that's been involved in it?
I'd just like it to carry on. It's not about making money. I just would like it to carry on from here, and I've told my son, who I've given the building to, that should remain here, even when I'm gone. When I'm dead and gone, nobody to. So, to carry on, Sabras. We've been approached many times from A, B, and C to do this and do that.
Am I reading too much in between? So James will hopefully take the baton.
Well, not the operational side.
Okay.
He owns the building. I've just said to him that you are not rented to anybody else, okay, until Sabras is here. And Sabras, we're going to build up a management team. That's the next thing. Succession in every business is very important. I mean, as you know, I'm involved in a lot of other businesses, and my main focus is other businesses. This is just a hobby, but it's equally important to have a succession policy. And for a little while, I've not really got involved with Sabras on a proactive basis. Because we had a management team running it all. But now it's a vacuum, it's fair to say. And I think the whole thing, not only our team, but I think our whole programming, we have to review where we are in the broadcasting world. There's a few changes, I think, that we need to make, and hopefully we'll make them for the right and build up another team and build up a successor who is going to drive the station forward.
Mr. Don Kotak, the Managing Director of Sabras Radio, it's been a very candid and open conversation. Thank you very much for taking your time out to speak to me on behalf of Business Events Radio.
Thank you, Tony. There are no cartels, by the way.
Thank you.